Victor awoke, gasping for air, the darkness of his bedroom thick and oppressive. His sheets clung to his sweat-soaked body, and his heart hammered against his ribs. Fragments of a nightmare clung to his mind like the remnants of a fever, stubborn and unnerving. He could still feel the cold, probing touches, the sensation of restraint, the figures standing over him, their breath humid and sour against his face. He sat up, rubbing his arms to dispel the phantom sensation of hands holding him down. As he moved, a sharp ache shot through his abdomen. He glanced down, frowning. There, just to the side of his belly button, a round, dark bruise marred his skin. He traced it with his fingers, trying to recall where he might have gotten it. Nothing came to mind. Shaking his head, Victor stumbled into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. His reflection stared back at him, hollow-eyed and pale. He gripped the edge of the sink, forcing his breathing to slow. It was just a nightmare, just a lingering terror from the depths of his subconscious, nothing more. But as he returned to bed, the shadowed corners of his room seemed to watch him, the darkness itself pressing closer, wrapping around him like cold, damp cloth. In the days that followed, the headache started. Dull at first, a persistent throb behind his eyes, but quickly growing sharper, each pulse of pain stabbing through his temples like splintered bone. His body ached in ways he couldn't explain, his muscles tight and unresponsive, his bones feeling too dense, too heavy beneath his skin. Victor found himself craving strange foods. It started simply enough, an uncharacteristic desire for pickles, diet soda, raw onions. He brushed it off as stress, perhaps a lingering effect of the nightmares, but soon his cravings grew more insistent, more unsettling. He found himself staring too long at the raw meat section in the grocery store, his mouth watering at the sight of bloody, unprocessed flesh. Once he even reached for a package of raw ground beef before catching himself, heart racing in sudden, inexplicable fear. At night, the figures returned, shadows hovering over him, their cold, probing touches slipping beneath his skin, their whispering breaths hot against his neck. He would wake with a jolt, his sheets soaked, his body trembling, the memory of their touch lingering like the ghost of an infection. He tried to push it from his mind, to dismiss the ever-growing fear as simple paranoia. But his reflection betrayed him. His cheeks had hollowed, his eyes sunken and dark. He felt his ribs pressing against his skin when he dressed each morning. His once comfortable shirts, now tight and restrictive around his torso, he felt swollen, his abdomen heavy and distended, the skin taut and sore to the touch. The cravings worsened. Victor caught himself in the garage one morning, fingers wrapped around a bottle of windshield wiper fluid, the cap already twisted off. The harsh chemical odor filled his nostrils, and for a moment, the sharp blue liquid seemed almost inviting. The realization hit him like a slap, and he flung the bottle away, his heart racing, bile rising in his throat. The strange appetites grew more grotesque, his sense of taste and smell warping into something unfamiliar. He would find himself staring at the garden mulch outside his kitchen window, his fingers twitching with the urge to reach out to taste the dark, crumbly soil. His stomach growled constantly, a deep, aching hunger that no amount of normal food seemed to satisfy. His friends and family began to drift away, their concerned voices turning to whispers behind his back, their worried glances sharp and cutting. He avoided them, shame twisting his insides, his swollen, aching insides. His abdomen had grown even larger, the skin stretched tight and shiny, veins pulsing beneath the surface like trapped, writhing worms. One afternoon, while standing before his bathroom mirror, he saw it, a small, blunt protrusion pressing against the inside of his stomach. He staggered back, clutching the sink for support, his breath coming in sharp, terrified gasps. The lump moved, pushing against his flesh, a tiny hand, fingers splayed against the tight, translucent skin. He screamed. The sound echoed through the empty house, his reflection pale and terrified, his eyes wide and glassy as he clutched his head, the migraine blooming behind his eyes like a spreading rot. Victor collapsed into bed that night, his body shivering with fever, his mind slipping in and out of fever dreams. The figures came for him again, their cold, probing hands pressing against his stomach, their whispered breaths slipping into his ears, winding through his mind like a slow, invasive poison. He awoke to darkness, his body drenched in sweat, his head pounding, his stomach a tight, searing knot of pain. He blinked against the shadows, his vision swimming, his senses slow to catch up to the waking world. The room stank of old blood and wet earth, the air thick and cloying, clinging to his skin like damp rot. Two figures loomed beside his bed. They were not the sleek, gray-skinned invaders of his nightmares, but something far more primal. Their skin was mottled and leathery, stretched tight over long, twisted limbs. Their wide, lipless mouths hung open, strings of thick, dark saliva dripping from rows of small, jagged teeth that clacked together softly as they breathed. Their eyes, black and wet like polished stones, fixed on him with an unblinking, predatory intensity, the gaze of a starving animal cornering its prey. One of them leaned closer, its head twitching to the side in sharp, bird-like jerks, nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of his sweat and fear. It sniffed at him, its breath hot and foul, a damp exhale that reeked of old meat and decaying leaves. Its thin, clawed fingers flexed, the joints cracking wetly as it reached toward him, brushing the trembling flesh of his exposed abdomen. The second creature clacked its teeth together rapidly, the sharp sound echoing through the small dark room. Its head tilted in fascination as Victor's terrified breath came in short, sharp gasps. They moved closer, their long, knotted limbs creaking like the ancient branches of trees swaying in a storm, their slick, wet skin brushing against his own as they bent over him, sniffing, prodding, their movements driven by instinct more than reason. The pain hit him suddenly, a sharp, tearing sensation deep in his abdomen, like rusty hooks catching on his insides and pulling them in opposite directions. Victor clutched at his stomach, his fingers digging into the tight, distended flesh as something shifted, kicked, twisted beneath the surface. He felt the skin stretch, the tissue beneath tearing strand by strand, the sharp pop of ligaments snapping like dry twigs. A grotesque bulge formed just below his ribs, the outline of tiny clawed fingers pressing against his flesh, stretching it to the breaking point. He could feel the creature's frantic movements, the desperate push for freedom, as his muscles tore and his organs ruptured. His veins stood out like twisted roots, dark and pulsing beneath the thin, translucent skin. He felt his ribs crack, the sharp, wet snap sending a wave of agony through his body as the thing forced its way upward. Blood streamed from the torn edges of his skin, hot and thick, pooling around him as his abdominal wall split open. The creature's claws punched through, the black, spindly digits slicing through flesh and muscle like razor blades. Victor's screams grew ragged, his throat raw and bleeding as his body buckled. Bones snapped, spine bending back in a grotesque arch. The creature's head emerged next, its bulbous, glistening form pushing through the ragged tear in his torso like a wet, slithering pop. Its dark, glassy eyes blinked for the first time, the small jagged teeth lining its wide, lipless mouth already bared in a savage, instinctual snarl. It pulled itself free of Victor's shattered ribs, dragging its slick, writhing form out into the cooling air of the blood-soaked bedroom. The two larger creatures reached down, their long, thin fingers cradling the newborn as it squirmed, its tiny claws still dripping with the remnants of its human incubator. They tilted their heads, sharing a moment of quiet, familial contentment before slipping towards the window, their infant cradled between them, disappearing into the darkness without a backward glance. As his vision faded, Victor felt an odd, aching emptiness, a sense of strange, unexplainable loneliness, as if some essential part of him had been ripped away, leaving him somehow incomplete. Victor's last, fading thought was one of strange sadness. He'd never even gotten to hold the baby.